Major John Carter stood on the observation deck as dawn light spread across the desert plains of Vega Prime. He felt a quiet pride in the small human colony that lay before him. It was a modest outpost with a handful of domed habitats, solar farms, and patched landing pads. Humans had built it in honor of exploration and hope. John wore his dark flight suit and checked his wrist display. Scouts had reported nothing unusual so far. Still, he sensed tension among his people. Supply ships from Earth were days away, and any threat that came without warning could leave them unprepared. Below him, Colonel Grace Mills led a team of engineers as they worked on the new sensor tower. Grace had bright eyes and a steady voice that put her crew at ease. She smiled and waved up at John before bending to adjust a data node. The tower was crucial. It could detect ships moving through deep space lanes. Without it, the colonists would have little time to respond to an attack. John remembered the many nights they had spent arguing over parts and circuit boards. Despite limited resources, Grace and her team had built a reliable system. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell walked toward the observation deck, holding a cup of warm coffee. He carried a quiet energy and a sharp mind. He offered the cup to John. John accepted it and took a sip. The coffee was bitter, but it warmed him. Ryan studied the horizon and nodded toward the sky. Sensors picked up a Drauxy probe 2 hours ago, he said. It scanned the colony from orbit and then vanished in a blink. John frowned. Any signs it sent data back? He asked. Ryan took a slow breath. No confirmation yet, but they have fast com lenses. If they saw our defenses, they will report it right away. Elsewhere, on the other side of the galaxy, the Drauxy High Council gathered in a chamber carved from black crystal. Their walls pulsed with purple light. Drauxy delegates spoke in low voices as they crowded around a long table. They were tall and lithe, with scales that shimmered pale blue. Each wore a plaque that showed their rank. At the head sat Overlord Zickel, his cloak flowing like liquid stardust. The council debated the human threat. Most delegates shrugged at human legends. To them, stories of human bravery and cunning were just myths. They believed the humans were weak, limited by flesh and bone. They have no star dominators or planet breakers, said Counselor Rix. He tapped his claw against the crystal table. Humans fight with small ships and primitive weapons. They pose no real danger to the Imperials. Ambassador Lavra Hayes rose from her seat. She had only a small rank but carried a human spirit that surprised many. Her silver hair fell over a light uniform. Her voice cut through the chatter. You speak of humans as if they lack heart, she said. They survive on worlds harsher than ours. They fight with courage no creature has seen. Their legends tell of fleets that came from the void to save the weak. Do you dismiss these tales too quickly? Some delegates snickered. Legends and tales are for children, scoffed Counselor Varel. He leaned back and crossed his arms. Where is this great fleet? Show me one ship that can stand against a Drauxy war cruiser. The stories yield no proof. Lavra looked around the council chamber. She knew her words would not sway many. She thought of Vega Prime and the brave men and women waiting for help. She held her ground. We speak of lost battles and hidden fleets. But does that mean they do not exist? The humans hide their strength under the cloak of peace. What if they choose to strike when you least expect it? Overlord Zickel walked forward. His tall frame cast a shadow on the crystalline floor. He regarded Lavra with judgment. We will not fear tales that lack proof, he said. The Drauxy patrol will destroy any hidden fleet before it emerges. We will send a probe to confirm. If the humans have power, we will break it. Until then, we mock their dreams. Back on Vega Prime, John greeted Captain Luis Carter, his cousin, and second in command. Luis held a tablet showing schematics of the colony's defenses. Sir, do you think the Drauxy will attack? John studied the files. He saw the limited shield generators and thin armor plating. He knew the outpost could not survive a direct assault. I do not know, he admitted, but we must prepare as though they will. Grace, ramp up the sensor tower. Ryan, coordinate the evacuation plan for the non-combatants. Grace waved and turned back to her team. Ryan nodded and tapped instructions into his pad. John looked at the settlement on the horizon. Children ran with hoverballs. Farmers tended crops under protective lights. They trusted him to keep them safe. He felt the weight of it. He clenched his fist. In the silent hours before sunset, John walked through the colony's central plaza. The air smelled of spice from the dining hall. He paused by a fountain that spilled clear water over stone. He thought of Earth, of green forests and blue oceans. He thought of his family and friends who risked all to build this new home. He whispered a wish for their safety. That night, Vega Prime's sky grew dark. Stars twinkled like distant watchers. John Carter returned to the observation deck. He watched the sensor readouts. Ryan joined him. "Signal is active," said Ryan. "The Drauxi are moving ships toward our position." John felt a cold knot in his chest. "Alert the base. Sound the warnings. Tonight we stand ready." The lights of Vega Prime blinked to life. Alarm sirens began their low hum. Men and women took their stations. In the quiet cosmos, Vega Prime braced for what was to come. And far from here, hidden in the dark, a human fleet readied itself to answer the call. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell stood at the sensor console and watched the flickering lights. The readings showed thousands of Drauxi ships moving toward Vega Prime. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He whispered to the console, "Hold together." The machines hummed in reply. Down below, Colonel Grace Mills organized the technicians. She pointed to data screens and gave clear orders. "We must keep the tower alive. If we lose the sensor feed, we will have no warning. Rotate the backup generators, keep the cooling systems running." The engineers scrambled. Sparks flew from a damaged panel. Grace knelt and tightened a loose wire. She spoke quietly. "You can do this. Just a little more." The panel lit up. The sensor tower came back online. Grace smiled and turned to her team. "Good job. Stand by for next orders." In the observation dome, Major John Carter studied the stars. He remembered his training on Earth. He knew that fear could break soldiers. He tested his voice and spoke steady. "Ryan, tell the civilians to move to shelters. Ensure medical teams are on alert. Grace, prepare the backup power for the weapons array. We may have to fire on incoming ships." A faint alarm sounded. Ryan tapped on the console. Heat signatures detected. "The first wave of bombers is closing in." "They are still 10,000 kilometers out," John nodded. "Alert the crews. Get ready to fire." Far above the planet, the Drauxi Armada formed a great wall of steel and energy. Thousands of ships extended across the sky. Captain Laura Bennett prepared the colonists' defense turrets. She loaded plasma charges into each launcher. Her husband, Pilot Eric Bennett, climbed into a small fighter craft. He turned to her and whispered, "I will protect you." She squeezed his hand. "Stay safe." Eric started the engines and powered the shields. He set a course toward the incoming bombers. His fighter jumped forward in a flash. He pursued the first Drauxi ship and fired. Bright bolts of energy streaked through space and struck the bomber's hull. The bomber exploded in a burst of light. On the planet, the turrets opened fire. They charged up their beams and fired in rapid succession. The beams carved trails through the sky and cut into enemy fighters. Explosions lit the dusk sky. John watched the display and felt a surge of hope. They can't hold forever. "Grace, how are the shields?" On her tablet, Grace tapped the shield controls. She frowned. "The generator is overloaded. We can sustain fire for only another 2 minutes without backup. We need the reserves now." John replied, "Activate reserve power." "Use every joule we have?" Grace hesitated and then flipped a switch. A low rumble ran through the ground. The shields flared brighter. Meanwhile, Ryan monitored civilian transmissions. Families huddled in bunkers below. He sent messages to each shelter. "Stay calm. Follow medical staff instructions. Supplies will last 48 hours. We will protect you." Suddenly, all the lights in the colony blinked. The power dip caused the sensor readings to flicker. John's heart skipped. "Grace, report?" He heard her voice over comms, strained but Clear. Shield power is at 10%. We may lose protection soon. John clenched his jaw. We cannot lose the shields. He glanced at Ryan. What about the fleet orders from Earth? Ryan checked a sealed transmission. He opened it and read fast. Admiral Price sends orders. We are to book jump to this sector in stealth mode. Jump vector is aligned. Estimated arrival in 3 hours. No direct support until we arrive. John nodded. Then we hold out until then. Every minute counts. High above, the Drowsy flagship Admiral Core watched as his fighters fell. He tapped his claw on the armrest. Send the heavy frigates, crush those turrets, bring that tower down. The frigates launched massive shells that boomed through space. The shells struck the sensor tower shield and cracked it. The tower swayed and smoke rose from its base. Grace saw the damage reports. She pressed her palm to the console. I can't hold it much longer. She turned to the tech. Evacuate the core. We might get one more cycle out of it. The tech grabbed his gear and ran. Grace stayed to reroute power. She shut down non-essential systems. The tower glowed as it tapped deep reserves. On the surface, the shield flickered. John saw a warning light flash. Shields down in 30 seconds. He yelled. The colonists outside looked up in fear. Before the tower could fail, a thunderous flash lit the sky. Shadows crossed the stars. The Drowsy ships paused, then a new shape appeared. Dozens of human warships jumped from hyperspace. Their hulls gleamed silver and blue under Vega Prime's sun. Ryan's eyes widened. They're here! The fleet is here! John smiled for the first time since dawn. Then we are not alone. Open a channel. I want to hear Admiral Price's voice. He keyed his comes. This is Major John Carter of Vega Prime. To any friend who hears me, we hold. The people of Vega Prime stand ready. He looked up at the fleet. The warships lined up behind the colonists like protectors. Grace joined him, dust on her face. She nodded. They came. John placed a hand on her shoulder. We did it. Out in space, the human fleet powered up weapons. Plasma cannons glowed along. The hulls, the Drowsy, became silent. They faced the true strength of humanity. And for a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Admiral Megan Price stood on the command bridge of the starship Starhawk. The bridge was dim, lit by the glow of control panels and holodisplays. She wore a dark uniform with silver stripes on her shoulders. Around her, officers spoke in quiet tones as they prepared their stations. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This day had been coming for years. Across the deck, Commander Alex Turner checked the warp drive status. The drive core pulsed with energy. Sparks of blue light danced along the conduits. Alex tapped the panel. Admiral, the drive matrix is stable. We can hold the current charge for up to 2 hours, Megan nodded. Good. Keep it ready. We will make our move when we support Vega Prime. Lieutenant Isaac Cole approached with a data pad. Admiral, the fleet formation is complete. All ships report mission readiness. Shield arrays at full strength, weapons online, med ships on standby. Megan scanned the list. She felt a small smile. Send the order to maintain stealth channel. No transmissions until we are in position. Once we emerge from jump, open the main channel on my mark. Isaac tapped the pad and walked away. Megan turned to the view screen. A green holograph showed the Vega sector. A small blue dot marked the location of Vega Prime. Surrounding it, empty space waited. The Drowsy vessels were not yet shown. They did not know where the fleet was hidden. Below the bridge, Chief Engineer Sonia Patel worked in the engine room. Her brow was furrowed as she monitored power levels. She wiped sweat from her forehead and examined a gauge. The novel drive. Design needed constant tuning. She whispered to herself, just a little more thrust, and we can make the jump. Her hands moved with practiced speed. Nearby, Ensign Leo Graham strapped into a maintenance pod. He was young, with bright eyes. He talked to the pod AI. Check the coolant lines again. We cannot let this core overheat. The AI beeped and ran diagnostics. Leo watched the readouts and nodded. All systems nominal, he said. On the bridge, Communications Officer Dana Lee listened to static. She frowned. No signals from Vega Prime. The jamming is strong. They must be under assault. Megan's face grew serious. Keep trying. Focus on short bursts. We need confirmation they are still holding. Dana tapped keys. A soft beep answered. I have a faint link. It is Major Carter. He says they hold but need relief soon. Megan nodded and spoke softly into the comm panel. Admiral Price here. Hold on, help is coming. Jump in 5 minutes, her words echoed in her mind. She had studied the human legends of Vega Prime. She believed them. Now she would prove them true. In another part of the ship, Medical Officer Clara. Diaz prepared the infirmary. She laid out supplies and activated med beds. She ticked off items on her list. Trauma kits ... check, healing gel ... check, oxygen reserves ... She paused and thought of the crews on the frontier. They had faced danger before. She would be ready to save as many as she could. Back on the bridge, Megan faced Isaac. Time until jump? Isaac glanced at his chrono. 3 minutes and counting. Megan looked toward the expanse of stars through the viewport. She felt a thrill of anticipation. Activate sequence. Calibrate the navigator. Pilot Jordan Mills tapped the helm. He was calm under pressure. Navigational vectors set. Ready on your command, Admiral, a soft alarm chimed. Megan pressed a key. Engage warp. The bridge lights shifted as power coursed through the drive. The Starhawk shuddered and then moved into a blur of starlight. Crew members held onto rails as the stars stretched into lines. Moments later, the ship materialized in real space above Vega Prime. The view was breathtaking. Blue oceans and orange deserts spread across the planet. Above it, Droxy ships hovered. In formation. They had not expected the humans to appear so soon. Isaac's voice broke the silence. Admiral, we are in position. Megan stood tall. All ships, this is Admiral Price. Engage weapons over Vega Prime. Shields up. Let the Droxy feel our strength. On secondary bridges across the fleet, orders spun out. Warships powered up railguns and plasma turrets. Support vessels readied repair drones. Fighters flared their engines above the colony. Vega Prime's turrets paused at the site. Colonel Grace Mills watched the horizon. She blinked. Can that be? Is that our fleet? John. Carter joined her. He shielded his eyes. It is. They came. A Droxy frigate opened fire on a human cruiser. Energy bolts struck the shield and dispersed. The cruiser fired back. Its plasma beams cut through the frigate's hull. The ship exploded in a silent burst on the Starhawk. Megan tracked the battle. She leaned over the tactical holo. Target the flagship. Focus fire. Isaac zoomed in on the Droxy command ship. Weapons locks clicked. Pilot Jordan maneuvered the Starhawk into range. Firing in 3.2.1. The main cannon released a broad beam of light. It struck the flagship's bow and punched a hole through its shields. The Droxy flagship shuddered. Admiral Kor's voice boomed over loudspeakers. All units fall back. Retreat from the system. His command ship turned and fled. Megan pressed her come. Hold your positions. Let them leave. We do not chase them out of range. We stand guard so they know we are here to stay. Below on Vega Prime, settlers cheered. The anxiety that had hung over them melted away. They waved and embraced. Captain Louise Carter led a team to repair the sensor tower. Colonel Grace and Ryan joined them. They worked side by side with fleet engineers. Jonathan Price's nurses treated wounded colonists. The human fleet had arrived not just to fight, but to heal. In the aftermath, Megan met with the colony leaders. In the central plaza, she shook John's hand. You held on until we arrived. You saved lives. John nodded, his face lined with fatigue and relief. We trusted the legends. And they were true, Megan smiled. This is only the start. We will work together to rebuild and defend. As the sun set over Vega Prime, humans from many ships mingled with colonists. They shared stories of home, of Earth, and of hope. In the sky above, the Starhawk stood guard, its hull gleaming with promise. And far beyond, the galaxy heard of the day when the true human fleet showed up. The Droxy Armada loomed over Vega Prime like a dark storm. Captain Lise Carter stood on the command deck of the colony's defense ship Vanguard. He watched the enemy vessels through the transparent viewports. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke into his com. All units, target the incoming frigates. Fire when ready. Below him, Engineer Grace Mills monitored the shield generator. She pressed her fingers against the control panel. The shields held for now but flickered under heavy fire. She called out, "Shields at 60%. We need more power from the reserves," Luis nodded. "Redirect all available power. Send extra juice to the shields and weapons." He tapped the console and watched the power gauges climb. On the surface, turrets opened fire. Each pulse of energy carved lines of light across the sky. A Drauxi fighter exploded in orange sparks. Colonel Ryan Mitchell stood next to the main battery. He squeezed the trigger and aimed at another ship. The recoil shook his hands, but he held steady. A piercing alarm echoed through the colony. Commander Lavra Hayes raced to the sensor tower. Smoke curled from the base. She knocked on the metal door and found Technician Maya Lee inside. Maya looked up. "The probe tower's down." "They used heavy missiles?" Laura's eyes widened. "Any data saved?" Maya pointed to a damaged console. "Maybe the core backup." "I can try." She pulled a disk from a slot and handed it to Lavra. "This has raw scans. They saw our layout and defenses." Lavra gripped the disk. "Good work. We'll make them pay for this." Above, the Drauxi flagship Admiral Kor hovered. He watched his fighters press the attack. He tapped his claws on the armrest. "Destroy that tower, then move in for the kill." He gestured with his free arm. "Send the heavy cruisers." The cruisers fired massive plasma shells. The ground shook. A wave of heat rippled through the colony. Families in shelters held their breath. Outside, Captain Luce's sirens blared. He shouted into his com, "Stand firm! Hold this line!" Grace worked with Maya in the tower's core room. Sparks flew around them. Grace called, "Maya, hand me that data disk." Maya handed it over. Grace connected it to a handheld reader. A stream of coordinates and ship signatures scrolled. Grace's eyes glowed with determination. "They left a blind spot here. We can loop the shields through this point to strengthen it." Grace saw the path. She typed commands. The shields glowed brighter over the new sector. Outside, the plasma shells hit and splashed off as if hitting stone. Ryan saw the shields hold and cheered. He rallied the gunners. "Keep firing!" The turrets unleashed barrages. The Drauxi fighters reeled back to dodge Dud in space. Vanguard fired its railguns. 2 cruisers exploded in a storm of shrapnel. Luis smiled. "Nice shot." On the Drauxi bridge, Admiral Kor slammed his fist. "Why are they still holding?" "Send reinforcements." Drauxi destroyers moved in to flank dot below. Vega Prime's defenders felt the pressure. Ammunition ran low. Medic teams treated the wounded. Lavra loaded a rifle and joined the fight. She ran into the fray, her heart pounding. She aimed carefully and fired. Ryan saw her and ducked to reload. He called out, "Lavra, get to the fallback line." She shook her head. "Not before they taste some human justice." He nodded, then took aim at an approaching bomber. The bomber swooped low and dropped bombs on the settlement. The explosions rocked the ground. Dust and debris filled the air. People scrambled to help the injured. Grace heard cries over the com. She left the tower and sprinted to the med bay. Inside, Clara Diaz worked on treating a young girl. Clara's calm presence soothed the child. Grace handed over extra healing gel. Clara smiled gratefully. Dot in orbit. Admiral Price watched the battle from the Starhawk. She spoke to her officers. "They need us now. Bring every ship into combat range." Isaac nodded and sent the order. Warships slipped out of stealth behind the enemy lines. Plasma turrets glowed. A salvo of bolts struck the Drauxi destroyers. The destroyers disintegrated in bright blossoms. On the ground, Ryan heard the cheers. He looked up through the smoke and saw silhouettes of human cruisers. He pounded his fist on a turret and yelled, "They're here!" "They're finally here!" The Drauxi fighters faltered. Their confidence cracked. The cruiser Vanguard fired a final volley and wiped out their remaining ships. Admiral Kor's voice trembled over comms. "Retreat! Fall back now!" "But the Human fleet blocked their retreat path. The Drauxi had nowhere to run. Captain Weiss gripped his console. He felt the pride of his people and the fleet together. He whispered, "We stand together. We win together." As the last enemy ship erupted in flames, silence fell. The settlers emerged from shelters. They looked up in awe at the stars. Vega Prime had survived. Its defenders had fought with courage and unity, and the true human fleet had proven to be unstoppable. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell stood beside Captain Lise Carter on the deck of the Vanguard. The morning sun glinted on the warship's surface. Vega Prime's skyline was scarred by battle damage. Smoke rose in thin lines. Ryan felt the weight of recent fights but held his stance firm. Louis studied a hollow display of retreating Drauxi ships. "They will regroup," he said. "We must strike before they rebuild." He tapped a control. "Prepare the boarding pods. We will take the fight to them." Below decks, Sergeant Maya Lee led a squad of Marines. She checked their gear. Each soldier wore a light exosuit and carried a plasma rifle. Their faces were set with resolve. Maya gave them a firm nod. "We move in 10. Load the pods and stand." "Ready?" The Marines snapped to action. On the bridge, Grace Mills monitored system repairs. Her hands flew over the console. Shields had been restored to 50%. Repair drones buzzed over damaged turrets. Grace spoke into her com. "Engineering to bridge. We have enough power for another engagement, but we must allocate it wisely." Captain Carter replied, "Understood. Keep the shields up and ready for our boarding operation." In the hangar bay, boarding pods opened. Fire teams strapped in. Pilot Eric Bennett climbed into a small shuttle. He checked his instruments and sealed the hatch. He spoke over the com. "All units report ready for launch." Ryan ran through his checklist. He glanced at Lavra Hayes and smiled. "Ready to show." "The more humans can do?" Lavra adjusted her helmet. "Always. Let's give them a lesson." Ryan nodded. Grace watched from the control room. She whispered, "Good luck." She returned to monitoring repairs. Captain Carter issued orders over the com. "System, engage boarding pods. Target the crippled cruiser." The hangar bay doors opened. Bright sunlight flooded the bay. The pods rocketed forward in a burst of light. Linda Torres, the squad leader, communicated with the bridge. "Boarding team en route, ETA 2 minutes." On the Vanguard sensors, the enemy cruiser lay disabled. One side of its hull was torn open. It spun slowly. Ryan's heart raced as he watched their approach. Inside the pod, Ryan gripped a handle. He felt the pod jolt as it connected to the cruiser's hull. A magnetic latch latched with a click. The door hissed open. Blue sky was replaced by dim corridors. Ryan flicked on his helmet light. Maya led the team through the corridor. The metal floor vibrated. They moved in tight formation. Maya held up a finger. "Take point." She tapped her rifle and motioned forward. Down the corridor the team found the central chamber. It led to the bridge. Ryan signaled for quiet. He listened. Voices echoed beyond the next door. They were Drauxi Marines. Ryan whispered, "On my mark, breach and clear." He raised his rifle. Maya counted down on her fingers. 3.2.1. They rammed the door open. Plasma fire lit the cramped room. The Marines returned fire but yelled in surprise. Ryan focused his shots. One enemy fell back. Maya grabbed a Drauxi and wrestled him down. The other Marines moved in swiftly. Captain Carter watched on his hololink. He saw the firefight unfold. He spoke into his com. "Good work. Hack their systems once you secure the bridge." Ryan nodded and reached the bridge door. He scanned for locks. The panel blinked red. He plugged in a bypass tool. Sparks flew. Then the door clicked unlocked. Inside, Admiral Core barked orders. He turned in shock as the door slid open. Ryan and Maya stormed in. Ryan aimed his rifle at the Admiral. "You're under arrest. Stand down." Core's eyes narrowed. He raised a weapon, but Maya fired first. The blast hit his shield brace. He staggered. Ryan stepped forward. "System override code now." He pointed to a console. The Admiral glared but began typing. The screen flashed green. The cruiser's power grid shifted. Shields turned on full around the vessel. Ryan checked the data. They have activated a self-destruct sequence. He shouted. Kor hissed, "We will take you with us." He lunged at Ryan. Maya tackled him to the ground. Ryan grabbed the Admiral's console and tapped commands. "Cancel! Cancel!" The screen blinked red. Sequence aborted. Behind them, the rest of the crew secured the bridge. They escorted Drowsy officers into containment cells. Ryan sighed in relief. Back on the Vanguard, alarms blared. Grace reported over comms. "Incoming fighters. They've scrambled reinforcements from another fleet." Louise barked orders. "All hands, brace for impact. Launch the boarding cruiser." "We will cover the Vanguard's shields," Ryan replied. "We've got the Admiral." Heading back to Vanguard now, the team left the bridge with Kor. Restrained, they reached the pod bay. The pods disengaged from the cruiser hull. They soared back through space. Explosions dotted the sky around them. Inside their pod, Ryan looked out the window. "Hang on," the pod rocked as it flew. They landed on the Vanguard and raced to the brig. Luis met them there. He unlocked the cell. "Well done, Ryan. You captured the Admiral." Ryan shrugged. "Just doing my job." He scanned Kor's face. "This will change the war." On the bridge, Grace watched the cruiser's shield strength recover. "Shields are at 80%. We can push forward now," Luis nodded. "Then we strike the command fleet before they regroup." He turned to Ryan. "Ready?" Ryan lifted his rifle. "Let's finish this." And so, under Vega Prime's sky, humans prepared for the final blow. Their fleet stood strong, their courage unbroken. Aliens who once mocked human legends would soon learn that humans could fight and win beyond any myth. The battlefield was quiet after the final skirmish. Smoke rose from broken warships and burned wreckage. Captain Luis Carter stood at the forward rail of the Vanguard. He watched the Drowsy retreat through the void. Their ships sped away, leaving behind scattered debris and silence. Beside him, Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell checked his rifle. His uniform was smudged with dust. He felt tired but proud. The Admiral they had captured lay in a reinforced cell below. His name was Kor, a title once feared across star lanes. Grace Mills walked up to Luis. She held a small handheld device. It displayed power readings. The shields took heavy hits, but they held. "We can repair them in hours." She turned to Ryan. "You did great. You saved dozens of lives." Ryan gave a small nod. "We all did. We fought as one. That is why we won." Across the deck, Claire Diaz tended to the wounded. She moved from one bed to another. She offered water and comfort. A young girl opened her eyes and saw Claire. She smiled weakly. Claire offered her a blanket. "You're safe now." Nearby, Maya Lee, the squad leader, disarmed mines around the hangar bay. Engineers had begun to clear debris. The boarding pods were to be reused for search and rescue. Maya waved at Grace. "We found 2 survivors under a collapsed drone. They will live." Grace smiled. "That is good news." In orbit above the planet, the human fleet formed a loose ring. Admiral Megan Price hovered. Her ship, the Starhawk, near the Vanguard. She spoke over the comms. "Captain Carter, this is Admiral Price. You held the line and broke the enemy. I salute you and your crew." Luis pressed his cum. "Thank you, Admiral. Your fleet was the turning point. Vega Prime owes you its life." Megan's voice was warm. "We will stay in orbit until repairs are complete. Then we will help rebuild." On the surface, Major John Carter walked among the colonists. He greeted families who returned from shelters. He hugged an elderly man. "Welcome back. Things will get better." Colonist Ethan Brooks brought John a datapad with broadcast messages from Earth. News channels spoke of the battle. They hailed the human fleet as heroes. John read the words and felt hope. He looked at the settlement. He saw kids cleaning rubble and laughing. He saw women and men planting gardens and fixing roofs. Lara Hayes joined them. She carried a holodisc with the Drowsy's own logs. "They recorded everything? They know they faced a force they could not beat. They will send diplomats soon." John nodded. "Then we must prepare for talks. We should show them we seek peace." But they must respect our strength, Lavra smiled. You speak with wisdom. Below the flagship, Admiral Price met with John and Louise in the colony's council chamber. It was a stone hall with arched windows. Sunlight poured in, casting warm stripes on the floor. Megan shook John's hand first. Major Carter, your leadership inspired the fight here. Thank you. John bowed his head. We did what we must. Thank you for answering our call. Megan turned to Louise. Captain Carter, your boarding team's actions secured the enemy flagship. That was bold, Lee smiled. We followed orders, but it helped. Megan faced Lavra. Ambassador Hayes, what do you propose? Lavra stepped forward. The Drauxi sent envoys to me once before. They mocked our legends, now they will come again. I suggest we meet them on neutral ground. We set the terms. We will agree to safe borders and trade. In return, they will respect human space. Grace spoke up. We need time to rebuild sensors and defenses. We cannot take risks. Ryan added, we should share some technology with friendly systems. Let them see our power. Megan listened, then she nodded. All good points. We will draft a treaty. We will invite the Drauxi to sign. John looked out the window. He saw the Starhawk's hull gleam in the sky. This day will become legend. The galaxy will know that humans stand for more than war. We stand for hope, unity, and courage, Megan smiled. And they will know that when humans call for help, they will not call in vain. Down the corridor, Admiral Kor sat in his cell. Young Drauxi soldier guarded him. The Admiral glared at Kor. Your pride brought ruin. You underestimated them. Kor hissed. Never mock an enemy. Never doubt a human legend. I will report this to the Council. They will learn. On Vega Prime's launch pad, a new shuttle prepared for departure. Pilot Eric Bennett climbed in. He was to deliver the treaty to a Drauxi rendezvous point. Olivia Ford, the shuttle's commander, wished him luck. Bring back news of peace. He nodded and sealed the hatch dot as the shuttle lifted off. Colonists and crew watched. They cheered its ascent. It carried humanity's terms for a new era. In orbit, the human fleet formed a salute. The Starhawk aligned with the shuttle's flight path. It trailed behind like an escort. On the ground, Major John Carter turned to his people. He raised his hand. Let us rebuild, let us heal, and let us write a new chapter. Today we stand together as humans. And tomorrow the stars will know our name. Vega Prime's skies glowed with dawn as the true human fleet stood guard. Legends had been tested. Legends had been proven real.